All right, well, let's jump in today. I'm Scott Cuthbert, co-founder of Safeopedia, and super excited to have Conn, Maciel, Carey back for another OSHA quick take. And I get to finally go back to all my chemical engineer friends and say, yes, we are talking more about process safety, because I always get the gears from them about how it's all about PPE and we don't get into process safety enough. So on today's quick take, we're going to be talking about process safety updates, the latest with OSHA's PSM standard, EPA's RMP rule, and then the Chemical Safety Board and their California counterparts. The full webinar is going to be August 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern or 10 p.m. Pacific, depending on where you are in the US. And the webinar, they're going to touch on review the status of OSHA's and EPA's process safety rulemaking and discuss the expected content of the new rules and how to prepare for them, and then analyze other process safety related developments at OSHA and EPA under the Biden administration, and then also touching on examine the CalOSHA's PSM standard and CalARP's RPM rule and strategies for navigating the challenges they present. So to kick things off, I'll turn it over to Eric. And I don't know if you want to introduce the team quick and then dive into the topic.
Thanks, Scott. I'm glad to be back with you and excited for a fun webinar coming up on August 5th. Process safety is a little bit of a specialty area for our firm, and you're looking at our great team of process safety specialist attorneys here. I'm Eric Conn. I'm one of the founding partners of the firm, and I chair the OSHA practice. Pleased to be joined by my colleagues, Rachel Conn, who chairs our California practice, Valerie Butera, senior counsel out of our Detroit, Michigan area office, and Beeta Lashkari, who's an attorney with us based out of Washington, D.C., who's also a former attorney investigator for the Chemical Safety Board. And so when we get into the Chemical Safety Board issues, she's got some real interesting information to share about what's going on at that agency. And this has been, a little bit of a dormant time on process safety issues generally for the first, 2/3 of the Biden administration. But there was a big development within the last few months where the much anticipated updates to the RMP rule were finally revealed by EPA. And OSHA, that operates the sister regulation, the process safety management regulation, has sort of been sitting on its hands. They haven't really been sitting on their hands. They've been working with EPA on the updates to the RMP rule. And now that that's done, the rulemaking machine is starting to gear up again on the OSHA side of things. And so we're going to get into, in this program, what's been going on at EPA, what's been going on at OSHA on the process safety front, and some chemical safety board updates. And that's my sort of high level review. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts.
Thanks, Eric. So we're going to talk about a number of the complex and sort of controversial new requirements that were added to the RMP with EPA's recent revisions. Things like there's new demanding requirements to keep up with RAGAGAP, which is regularly and generally accepted good engineering practices. These frequently evolve and are going to be pretty challenging, we think, for folks to keep up with. Required evaluations and enhancements to process engineering, responses to climate change, and disclosures about the process and its chemicals to people that are in the area surrounding a given facility. And we're going to discuss these and other critical requirements in detail. And while much progress was made on the PSM revisions, as Eric mentioned, they seem to have stalled out a little bit at OSHA again. We'll also talk about what we expect to happen there and all the kinds of changes we think we're going to see in the revised PSM standard. Plus, we have what's certainly going to be a consequential election coming up soon, and we'll discuss the impact we think that will have on the rules too.
Great. Thanks so much, Val. So we also have an update on the Chemical Safety Board and as well as on OSHA's emergency response rulemaking. So on the CSB side, at the beginning of the year, the agency set and met its goal of clearing out its investigation backlog before the end of the calendar year 2023. And sort of by any measure, that was the most protective year for the agency. It issued a record-setting 11 investigation reports. And having been there, I know that's a lot of work. So, for context, the CSB only issued, 6 reports in 2022, 3 in 2021, and none in 2020. So, we thought this was important for purposes of this webinar because a lot of those reports include PSM issues, right? So we'll go through some of those with webinar participants. There's also some information we received while interacting with the CSB related to incidents reported under the agency's new-ish accidental release reporting rule that requires owners and operators to report certain accidental releases to the agency. So we'll want to share that update. It's this new work product called Incident Report. So excited to share that with webinar participants as well. And then we'll also probably touch a little bit on OSHA's emergency response rulemaking. We know that the industry is affected by this. It's not directly related to PSM, but many employers who are regulated under PSM RMP will be affected by the rulemaking because they have fire brigades or emergency response teams. It's a highly technical, very long, very complex proposed rule. We formed a coalition composed of employers and trade groups representing various industries, right? Petroleum, refinery, certainly petrochemical manufacturing, liquid terminal operations, but also sort of agriculture, aerospace, so you name it. And we just submitted public comments to the docket. They were due just this last Monday on July 22nd. So it was kind of felt a little bit of relief there submitting those. But OSHA announced yesterday that it's scheduling an informal public hearing that'll be set that's scheduled for November 12th. So that's what we're planning. We're planning to prepare for that's our next step. So that's sort of on the CSB and emergency response rulemaking on the OSHA side piece that I'll be sharing.
And not to be outdone here in California, but being one of the most active state plan states, it's no different in the PSM area. CalOSHA continues to expand all of its units, and particularly PSM has become a focus unit of it. And this includes that they're in the middle of hiring 18 new positions, which will essentially double the size of the unit. And so we've already seen an increase in inspections. We expect to see that number continue to rise. So this is certainly a time we want employers to be prepared for those inspections. In addition, the Standards Board has also been active on PSM issues. They recently approved Petition 601, which requests an expansion of one of the PSM regulations to cover refineries that are now processing renewable feedstock. And the division has acknowledged that that's technically not covered by Section 5189.1. And so that is why they are looking to expand that. And what has been the trend here in California as well is that the legislature will not also be outdone. So they've also taken up legislation in Assembly Bill 3520, which is very similar to Petition 601, in trying to push a similar bill through the legislature. So that process goes much quicker than the Standards Board rulemaking process. So we may see them leapfrog CalOSHA with those additions as well.
All right, so lots to cover on the full webinar, August 5th. Again, 1 p.m. Eastern or 10 a.m. Pacific time. Full webinar on process safety update. We'll have a link in the description below, so we encourage you to click on the link and register for the webinar.